Right, so that's 12 o'clock by my watch, so I'll let you kick off, Gary, and tell us everything there is about Microsoft AI.
Okay, well, that might take a little bit longer than the time we have, but yeah, thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you for attending the session. My name is Gary Pretty. I'm a senior program manager on the Conversational AI team at Microsoft. So we build products like the Microsoft Bot Framework and Bot Framework Composer, and some of those we're going to see today. Essentially, the Conversational AI platform at Microsoft allows us to build chatbots, right, as a summary. But let's dive in and get some more information and see what we're going to be talking about today. So, you know, throughout the 1980s, 1990s and 2000s, we had sort of the three sort of what we would call sort of big waves, you know, the wave of the PC and the internet and mobile. And they were, all three of them have become completely pervasive, right? We don't even think about them anymore, really. You know, we do, obviously, we're in the industry, but most people don't even consider the fact that they've got a pretty powerful computer in their pocket all the time that they're carrying around with them. The fact that the internet is just there and it's sort of ready for them and they use it all of the time on lots of different devices. And we think the next wave really is going to be conversational, sort of conversational interaction with computers. We've already started seeing this over the last few years with the home assistants like Alexa and Google, and we think this is going to continue more and more. Demand for this has gone through the roof. And Microsoft have what we call the Microsoft Conversational AI platform. And I wanted to just give you a summary, start off with a summary now, and then we're really going to dig in and I'm going to show you how straightforward it can be to actually build up a pretty clever and sophisticated solution. And we'll see how far we get within the time that we've got. So everything starts with user input. So traditionally, you know, people would be, certainly over the last few years, people will interact with chatbots via text. But more and more we're seeing speech, as I said, through home assistants, but also just via, you know, the microphone on your PC or through your phone or maybe an embedded app or an IoT device. But it doesn't have to be that. We can have other input as well. And it's on really a multitude of channels, right? So the whole point here is that we're meeting our customers and the users where they are. So it can be public facing channels like web chat embedded on your website, or in a corporate, it could be internal facing on a corporate intranet. We could be on WhatsApp, which is, you know, incredibly popular at the moment and getting more popular when it comes to conversational AI, right through to Microsoft Teams. You know, huge growth in Teams over the course of the last year for obvious reasons. And along with that has gone the growth of conversational AI and bots within Teams as well. And to support that, behind all of these channels, you need an application to actually act as the, you know, to communicate with those users. And behind that, we have, underpinning everything, we have the Bot Framework SDK. And the Bot Framework SDK is available in 4 languages. We've got C#, Node.js, Python, and Java. Java's in preview right now. And the Bot Framework SDK has been around since around 2016. And some of you may have built apps using the Bot Framework SDK before. And until recently, that's the way you would build chatbots. You would build them sort of code first using the SDK. The SDK really allows you to control the, like orchestrate the comms between a user and a bot, but actually a lot of the intelligence comes in from cognitive services. Now, specifically within the cognitive services suite, we're looking to add language understanding. So we're going to use what's, you know, commonly known as the Lewis service, language understanding intelligence service, and that's going to help us recognize what's the intent of the user when they send a message, and let's, you know, maybe extract some key terms or entities or phrases from that message to help us act on that message. And another one is Q&A Maker. So Q&A Maker allows us to pass in provide a knowledge base of question and answer pairs and actually query that cognitive service with a question, and it will find the most appropriate answer. And we're going to see how we can use that later on today as well. And speech, I like to call it out at the moment. As I said, it's getting more and more popular, and our speech service has text to speech and speech to text capabilities. We now have neural voice fonts, which sound incredibly reel, where you can even control the style of the pronunciation and even have them mimic other people's voices. It's pretty crazy. But the big change over the last 12 months has been the introduction of some platforms on top of the Bot Framework SDK. Power Virtual Agents and Bot Framework Composer. Now, Power Virtual Agents is a no-code solution built into the Power Platform that allows you to build a virtual assistant rapidly, and gives you, quite a bit of flexibility, and obviously that great hook into the rest of the Power Platform. They have some great integrations. And really, the intent here is that if you're a business user, or you really just want to spin something up very, very quickly, if you're a developer, or you're, a citizen developer, maybe you're just getting started, then Power Virtual Agents is a great option for you. What we're going to focus on today, though, is Bot Framework Composer, and this is really our developer IDE. So it gives you a visual designer still and allows you to build bots, but actually gives you a lot of flexibility, as you'll see in some of the demos, and to actually build out a virtual assistant. Now, one thing I will cover off very quickly at the beginning now is people always say, well, is it Power Virtual Agents or Bot Framework Composer? Because they look very similar. And actually, you'll find that the integration between the two of them is getting much closer. So right now today, you can start in Power Virtual Agents, and you can extend the Power Virtual Agent solution as of a couple of weeks ago by opening it in Bot Framework Composer and having a developer help you extend that project. And we're only going to see that convergence continue. So really, it's a question of start where it makes sense, use the tool that makes sense for you. But really, our mantra is no cliffs, right? We want you to be able to start where it makes sense and then scale out as you need to. All right. So for today's demo, I'm going to walk through building a virtual assistant, and I'm going to use Tailwind Traders as the fictional company that we're going to focus on, and we're going to try and solve a problem for them. Tailwind Traders have recently sent out some employee surveys with everybody working from home to see how employee satisfaction is going. The great news is all the employees are quite happy still with their career progression. That was a highlight from the survey. But one of the lowlights was the fact that the processes in place don't make their job simple, right? They're still pretty cumbersome. Some of you, like me, before I joined Microsoft in my previous role, you would find that actually some of the processes were fairly out of date. If I wanted to submit an annual leave request, I'd need to go and print the form off, actually write it out myself, go and sign that, put it in someone's in tray, they go and sign it, take it to a manager. It was all really manual. And you can imagine trying to take those processes and actually move them over to a point where you're working from home, and how pretty frustrating that could be. And so we're going to look to see if we can use the Microsoft AI platform to actually start to improve situations like that from today forward. And so to do that, I'm going to switch over to Bot Framework Composer. So I've downloaded it. It's available as an Electron app. It's available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can get it at aka.ms/trycomposer if you wanted to download it and maybe even try some of these things out during the session, but I definitely encourage you to go and download that and give it a go. So we're here, it's open. It's also available as an open source web app. I should say that as well. If you wanted to deploy this centrally within your organization, we have customers who do that so that you can access it via a browser, and the whole thing's open source. So we develop the Bot Framework SDK and the Composer completely in the open. There's really a broad spectrum of options, but most people go for the Electron app, certainly with Composer. So right here, when I open Composer, I get a set of samples available to me on the right-hand side that are going to walk me through various scenarios and capabilities when I'm building a bot. And if I want to create a new bot, I can click New, and again, I can select one of these templates, or I can create from scratch. To save a little bit of time, I've already created a project, so I'm going to select the DDD demo from my recent projects. And we're now within the Composer designer. And so I need to really think about what I want to actually build. So I want to do a couple of things. I want to build a bot that will allow Tailwind Traders employees to carry out common tasks like requesting annual leave. They should be able to provide all the details that are needed and then actually submit that request. I also would love to provide them with access to frequently asked questions, like we said before, using that Q&A maker service to actually allow them to ask questions of the bot. And then we're going to surface this bot in something like Microsoft Teams so that actually it's just there where they're working all day, every day. That's where the bot is and they can actually interact with it. Right, so I'm in the Composer Designer, so how do I get started? Well, the first thing to understand is that bots built with Composer are really based on triggers and actions. So you get a list of triggers over here on the left-hand side, such as this greeting trigger, which you get added for you in any Composer project. If you start from scratch, you start with just the greeting trigger like we have done here. If you start with one of the templates, you might get some more triggers. And the idea is that triggers allow me to respond to external events. So that could be a message being received by the bot or some sort of external event happening, such as the greeting trigger, where I have this conversation update event, which means if someone joins the conversation, someone starts the conversation, this trigger will fire. And then I have one or more actions in the canvas in the center here, which get executed in response to that trigger firing. I can add a new trigger if I want to, and you can see here the list of triggers that are available to me. We won't dig into them all today, but I'm going to show you examples of a few of these. All right, before we start adding more triggers though, let's have a look at the built-in greeting trigger and see what we make of that. So what's actually happening here, we've already added some logic for you out of the box to basically say, I want to get a list of the people that have joined the conversation, and for each one of them, I'm going to make sure that it's not the bot because the bot joined its own conversation. So we just need to make sure we filter that out. And I want to send an action. And I can actually add actions to my canvas through this menu here by clicking the plus icon. And you can see here, I can send a response back to the user. I can ask different types of questions. I can create conditions. I can even, access external resources like sending HTTP requests and getting responses. So there's a lot I can do, but we're starting and we start you off with a simple send a response action. Now, by default, there's a template in there. I'm just going to take that out for now. And I'm just going to show you how this works from a basics perspective. So to send a response, I can say something like, hi, welcome to the Tailwind Traders. That's my first response. So user joins the conversation. This action will be fired because the greeting trigger is executed. And my welcome message will be sent and the user will see that message. But you'll notice here, this says language generation. It's not just a plain string. And language generation is effectively a syntax to allow you to add some richness to your responses. And a great example of that is I can actually add a second response and say, hi, welcome. How can I help you? One of the problems with bots more traditionally is the fact that they can sometimes feel quite stale when you're using them over and over again. And so one of the basic features of language generation or LG syntax is I can specify more than one response, and the bot will actually pick from them randomly when I am engaging with the bot as an end user. Just meaning that it starts to feel a little bit less stale. And I'll show you another couple of examples of LG later on. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to start this bot. This bot's going to build in the background. Underneath, the great thing about Composer is it's actually building on top of the SDK, and there is an SDK project, a Visual Studio solution file and project files that are there that you can open up and you can extend if you want to. So again, our idea is no cliff. So I can start in Composer. I have, ample amount of resources to me to actually create some pretty great projects. But if I need to extend it or I need to customize something, I can do that by opening up what we call our runtime, which is effectively our bot project in Visual Studio, and I can extend it there. And that even extends what we won't see today to adding additional actions in this menu. So we'll get a custom actions menu item, and then in there I can actually add my own actions to be added to the canvas if I want to. which is fantastic. Okay, just while that bot's starting, one thing I will call out, this is a nightly build. We're actually about to release a new version of Composer on Monday, and this is an early build. So I'm hoping that there's no problem with with starting the bot. No, here we go. Right. So the bot started. The first time it starts, I need to open the firewall so it can communicate with the service. I'm going to add that. And now you can see that my bot's running. So there's virtually nothing to this bot right now, but I'm going to open up the bot framework emulator, which is a tool that comes with Composer. So let's go ahead and open that. And I can click test an emulator. It will open the emulator and it will immediately jump me into my bot. Now let's zoom in so you can actually see what's going on. Okay, so you can see it down at the bottom. It says, "Hi, welcome. How can I help you?" If I restart the conversation using the restart conversation button, it now says, "Hi, welcome to the Tailwind Traders Assistant." And I can continually restart this bot. It's going to pick a different response at random. So that's awesome, right? But the bot doesn't do anything at the moment. So let's go back and add some more functionality. Okay, the next type of trigger I want to add is an intent recognized trigger. So this is now where we're going to integrate with the language understanding service, the Lewis service that allows us to provide intents. So a list of intents, a list of natural language intents, along with some examples of what a user might say to trigger that intent, so that we can really understand what the user wants when they send a message to the bot. Previously, I would have had to have gone to the Lewis portal and create that natural language model myself, defining all the intents and the utterances, which is what we call examples, and publish that model, and then manually wire that up with my bot. But now that we have Composer, the idea is that we really want to try and keep you within your sort of design context so that you don't need to go and do your natural language model design in the Lewis portal. You can do it all within Composer. So the first thing I do is I give the type of trigger a name. So I'm going to say book vacation, because this is going to be my annual leave request. And then I can just provide some examples. So it could be book leave, take a holiday, book an annual leave request, and schedule some annual. Okay, so I'm providing a few examples. You could provide more. As soon as I hit submit, that's going to add a new trigger now to my bot over here on the left hand side. I've now got a book vacation trigger, and that's going to be triggered when a message gets received, and that message, we will query that Lewis model that's going to be created for us, and we'll see that shortly. And if the top recognized intent of that message is to book a vacation based on it being similar to one of these trigger phrases, then this trigger will fire. So what do I need to do in response to this trigger? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to ask a question. And this time I'm going to use a date or time prompt. So let's do that. And with a prompt, it's very similar to sending a response. I can provide some text. So when would you like your leave to start? So fix the typo. Apparently I can't type. So I provide the prompt text, if you like. And then the other thing I need to provide is, as well as what's the question that I'm going to ask of the user, I need to provide a way of storing their response. And to do this, I can actually store a variable. So I can store a variable called dialog.startDate. Dialog is effectively a collection of actions, and we have what's called a memory scope available to us, where we can actually just store variables arbitrarily. And so I've said dialog.startDate, and that means actually this variable will exist within the scope of the group of actions that we're looking at here. So this will ask the user a question, the user will respond, it's going to validate it that it's a date time, and then it's going to store the resulting value in dialog.startDate. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to copy this action because I now want to get the end date. So I'm going to change this to when would you like your leave to end? And this time, instead of dialog.startDate, you guessed it, I'm going to do dialog.endDate. So we've now got two prompts that are actually going to ask the user for their start and end date and store them in memory for us to use later. I can then go ahead and ask another question. So this time I'm going to pick multi-choice. And what I'm trying to show you here is how quickly it is to actually build up a fairly great conversation with a bot where you can actually start to accept input from a user. So what type of leave would you pick to book? Right. So again, now one thing to call out here, I could actually provide multiple responses here like I did do for the welcome message if I really wanted to make this bot very engaging. I'm not doing that in the interest of time, but it's just to really call out that you can do that. Again, I'm going to provide dialogue.type this time. So I'm going to store this choice in a type. And because it's a multi-choice, if I scroll down, there's lots of options. Most of them you will never use, but we provide you with a hell of a lot of flexibility when it comes to building your bot. This really is a developer-focused IDE. So here I'm going to go with an array of choices. So I'm going to go with annual leave, unpaid leave, and other. Right. Okay, so I'm now asking the user for their start date, I'm asking the user for their end date, and I'm providing them with a choice about which type of leave they would like to book. So the final question I want to ask them really about their dates is I want to ask an open question, and I'm going to give them the opportunity. So provide comments for your request, and I'm going to store that in comments. And really, this is just like an open text question. And we'll store that. So I've now collected all of the information I want to collect from the user. So I'm ready to effectively confirm whether or not these details are correct. So first thing I can do is I can use a confirmation prompt this time. And here I can say, are these details correct? You can actually then start to reference variables that are in memory using this dollar notation. So we can say dialogue.type. Let's just do that for now, just as an example. And we'll just keep it really, really simple for now in terms of that message. And we'll store the answer, confirmation. And this time I'm going to branch my logic, right, depending on their answer. So we'll create a condition, and this is an if-else condition. And here we want to use what we call our adaptive expressions library. And here we have a whole heap of different functions that you can use on the values that you stored in memory and maybe respond, results from HTTP calls, etc. So this is very simple. I want to use a logical comparison. And I'm going to say dialogue.confirmation, which is the answer to the previous question. And I'm going to say if the dialogue.confirmation is true. And then you can see here that I can start adding actions in each of the individual flows. So let's add a response to the true condition and say, great, booking your request. And I'm going to add an answer to the false condition and say, okay, let's start again. And if I wanted to start again, I can use what we call our dialogue management actions. And I can say, I just want to repeat this dialogue. Now, in the real world, you'd probably put something in there to say, well, what did you want to change? And maybe walk them through a step-by-step process of changing it. But in this case, I'm just going to say, I want to repeat this dialogue, and it'll effectively start them from the top of this group of actions again. The last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all of these actions because I wanted to call out that whilst these actions right now are responding to a specific trigger, book vacation, I can also take all of these actions and group them into a sub-dialogue. So if I create leave request, what that's going to do is it's going to take all those actions and it's going to group them over here in a dialogue of their own, if you like. And what we should see, if my computer hurries up, there we go, is that now when the book vacation trigger gets fired, we are calling the create leave request dialogue. It added this begin dialogue action to my flow. And that's going to then trigger this create leave request dialogue. Now you may think, well, why do that? But actually, it means that I can now call this create leave request from anywhere in my bot. So there may be other routes in which I want to get somebody to indicate that they want to create a leave request. So we've now just made these actions reusable, which is awesome. Okay, so before I can start my bot, there is something that we need to do. So if I click on this key here, it's telling me that my Lewis key and region are missing. Now this is the tie-up to the language understanding service. So I can actually fix this over in the bot settings page, and it tells me exactly what's wrong, which is preventing me from starting. So I'm going to head over to Azure. And in Azure, I've created a language understanding resource. It's on a free tier, so you can get started very, very quickly. It took a couple of minutes to create. And the only thing I need to get from here is a key. So I'm going to copy that key, and I'm going to drop that into here, whereas that's for the Lewis key. And I'm going to set the region. And now that I've done that, I'm able to start the bot, or restart it, because we've already started it previously. Now, what's actually happening now behind the scenes is, as well as building the project locally and starting it so that I can connect to it with the emulator, the bot framework composer is actually taking the trigger phrases that we created as part of this book vacation trigger. And it's going to go and create a Lewis model for me. It's going to publish that up into the Lewis portal, as I said before, and it's going to make that available for my bot to actually query. So while that's happening, let's just jump over and have a quick look at this. So if I refresh the page, what we should see is that there is a new app called DDD Demo, which is the name of my bot that I've created. Is being created for me. And if I click into that application, you can see here that you could have come in here and manually built all of this yourself, but we've actually created a book vacation intent for you. And in here are the utterances or example phrases that we provided. And it's trained the model, it's published the model, and this is ready to go. So that's awesome. So let's switch back over to Composer. We can see that the bot's now running. I've already got the emulator open, so I'm going to switch back over and I'm going to restart the conversation. So again, I get my welcome message, that's great, but this time I can now say, book some leave. And what's going to happen is it's going to call Lewis, and you can see over here in this activity trace that I sent a message saying book some leave, and then the Lewis model was queried, and in here we can actually see the result. You can see that actually the model is 97% confident effectively that book some leave maps to our book vacation intent, and because of that the book leave trigger was fired. It called my dialogue, and now it's executing my actions. So you can see here it's saying, when would you like your leave to start? So I can say tomorrow. And because we have some built-in date time recognizers within the SDK, I don't have to provide the date in a specific format. I can just use natural language. So I can say next Friday. And you can see here that those prompts that I've been providing are now just allowing me to interact with this bot very, very quickly. Even when I know that the response is within a fixed set of responses, like with multi-choice, it's providing me with suggested actions. So I can just pick one, saying provide some comments, and I can say no. And then it comes up and says, are these details correct? Okay, so that's awesome, right? I've created a basic flow there, which allows me to interact with the bot. And that's awesome. And I've stored the details, and you can see that I used the type variable as part of my response, and that has dropped in the choice that I picked earlier on, which is great. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we want to do to try and make this conversation a little bit richer, a little bit better. So the first thing is, I would love it. You know, I've made a mistake here. I've said no to the please provide comments for your request. I actually wanted to say, you know, long weekend, for example. So I could say change the comment to long weekend, because that's a pretty natural thing to do, right? So if I try that, the bot's going to come back and it's just going to re-prompt me, because it's expecting a yes or a no answer. And again, this is the problem with sort of, you know, bots previously, or more traditional chatbots, is they're actually expecting quite rigid responses. But we can actually solve that very easily inside of Composer. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and go and do that now. So let's jump back in here. I'm going to go back to the book vacation actions that I added before. I'm going to scroll down to the confirmation. So are these details correct? I'm going to select it. And as part of the properties for the prompt, I'm going to do something called enabling interruptions. And this is effectively what we're doing, right? So if I say, oh, change the comment to something else when you're expecting yes or no, it's quite a natural thing for a human to do, not necessarily natural for a computer to handle. And so we are enabling the interruptions capability. And just like we have triggers at the top level of our bot, we can actually create triggers within specific scopes as well. So if I'm within my create leave request dialog, I'm going to add another intent recognized trigger, and this time it's going to be called change comment. And this trigger will only get fired if I'm already within the create leave request flow. So I could do change the comment, change, edit the comment. And I can even start to introduce natural language entities that are supported by the natural language service. So I could do change the comment to, and then I can say, well, actually, the next thing I'm expecting here is an entity. So it won't always be the same, but we're going to use the natural language model to extract it for me. And so I'm saying change the comment to comment equals long weekend. That means I've created a machine learned entity called comment. And the last thing I need to do is actually specify that comment is machine learned, because there's pre-built entities as well. I could have date times, I could have numbers, and they'll all automatically be extracted for me. So here I'm saying, here's my trigger phrases. So if someone says this when they're at within the scope of the create leave request, let's see if this intent gets fired. And so I'm going to add that trigger. You can see it will appear underneath create leave request. And what we're going to then do is we're going to ask a question. And we're going to say, we're going to ask them, what would you like to change the comment to? So we're basically saying, okay, you've told us that you want to change the comment. So I'm going to say dialog.new comment. And the other thing I'm going to do here, though, is because I've got this machine learned entity at comment, I can actually say, look, if you recognize that machine learned entity, the comment entity that I defined before, I'm going to specify that as the pre-filled value for this prompt, and you're just going to skip it. So if it finds the comment as part of the incoming message, it will pre-populate that prompt result and it will skip it. And you'll see why that works quite nicely in a moment. So the last thing we want to do is we want to use our manage properties actions, and I'm going to set a property. And effectively what I'm going to say here is I'm going to take the dialog.comment. I just want to check that I said comment and not comments. So previously when we asked the initial question, I called it dialog.comments. That's where I'm storing the original results. So now I want to say override dialog.comments with dialog.new comment. So we're basically saying I want to override the original result with the value that we've gathered as part of this interruption. Okay, so let's give that a try and see if that works. The other thing I'll do is I'm going to click into this confirmation, and we will add a comment in here so we can actually see if it's worked. I'm going to say write out dialog.comments, and we'll restart the bot. So again, what's happening now, we've added some new trigger phrases within this new create leave request trigger. If I go back to Lewis, once this is done, you'll actually see that it's added those intents to the model for me. It's retraining and it's republishing that model. And then we should be able to go back to our flow in emulator, take the same steps that we took before, but this time, hopefully, when we say change the comment to long weekend, it will actually recognize that our intent is to change the comment, and it will execute these actions within the change comment trigger. And once this is completed, because it's an interruption, the bot should pick back up again right where it left off down here at the confirmation. So I can see my bot's finished building, so let's go and give that a go. One nice thing about the emulator is I can actually go back to a previous message that I've sent and say, I just want to restart the conversation from here, and it will go ahead and replay the whole conversation for me. So let's let it do that. We'll get through until, oh, it says, oh, that's interesting. Let's try that again. See if it's got. Okay, so for whatever reason, the replay didn't work, but it's now saying provide comments, so I can say no. I can come back in, and hopefully this time I can say change the comments to long weekend. Let's see what it does. Okay, so I have made an obvious mistake there, but you can see here that it's now saying dialog.new comment. So the actual interruptions worked. It has overwritten the value. The thing I didn't do correctly there, though, is inside change comment, where I'm setting the property. It thinks this is a string. What I need to do is I need to make sure it's saying, look, I'm actually referring to a variable that is in memory. So I'll restart that bot. We'll give that a try in a moment, and we'll see what that says. Okay. So we've created a system relatively quickly in just about 30 minutes, including me talking through it. I could have done this much quicker. We've added the ability for you to book a leave request, and we've also added the ability for you to interrupt and change a value. If you made a mistake, I could add change end date, change type, interrupts very quickly. And that actually, I could work through this process and actually very, very naturally, you know, our customers not to move through in a sequential linear fashion. So hopefully you recognize how sort of straightforward that is. Let's try and add the other use case though to the bot that we wanted to add. And this time we wanted to make available FAQs. So we've done specific use cases. We're making FAQs. I've actually got an FAQ page here for Tailwind traders. I'm going to copy the URL, and you can see here all the Q&As are actually built into this page like a traditional page, but customers today, users have to visit this page and find the answers themselves. Well, within Composer, as well as being able to add sort of normal triggers, I can add a knowledge base. When I add a knowledge base, it asks me for a name, and I can provide a URL source, and I'm going to create this knowledge base. What's actually happening behind the scenes is we are using the Q&A maker service that I mentioned before that allows me to specify a knowledge base of question and answer pairs. And that has the ability to extract FAQ pairs from web pages, documents, PDFs, etc., so that you can start to build them up. And it's actually very quickly extracted all of that content for me into question and answer pairs. They've all come from this web page. And I can add alternative phrasing if I want, so I can add examples to actually improve the model. So what does WOB mean, for example? I could add that as a phrase. And then I want to now publish this because I now should be able to ask my bot questions, any of those questions within that FAQ page. I can add more if I want to within Composer. I can remove them. It's now fully manageable. Again, it's now telling me actually you need to add a Q&A maker subscription settings. So let's jump back over to Azure. I've pre-created the resource, takes a couple of minutes to create. Again, there's a free tier for you to use. Let's copy the key. Let's pop that into here. And then let's go ahead and restart the bot. So now the bot is not only creating, publishing, training our natural language model, but it's going to go ahead and it's actually going to create and train and publish our Q&A maker model. Now I pre-created one just so that we could look into it while this was happening. This is the Q&A maker portal. And again, I could add Q&A pairs in here myself and publish it on myself if I wanted to, test it and train it. But again, we want to keep within the flow within Composer. One thing to call out that we do within Composer now, which is pretty cool, is people have used Q&A maker and language understanding within bots for a while, but sometimes the bot would get confused between the two. You might have questions that sound similar to intent triggers. And so we do now something called cross-training, where we're actually taking all of the intents that we know about from your language understanding model, and we're adding them automatically to your Q&A maker model with this special deferral syntax, which tells the bot, actually, for this particular thing, even though it's similar to something in my Q&A model, you actually should go to Lewis and defer to that model instead. So that's pretty cool. So let's go back to the bot and see if that's running. That's running now. So let's jump back to the emulator. I should be able to restart my conversation, get the welcome message again. Now I should be able to say, what does WOB mean? And we should get an answer, work on behalf of. But it still means I can say, you know, book some leave. And you can see here now what's happening is, because we're building up those triggers, those initial triggers that we're going to use, I'm now effectively adding use cases to my bot. And so I asked a question, I then got an answer from the knowledge base, I then asked another question, and it started me into my, my leave flow, which is pretty awesome. So you can see how quickly we've actually built up a virtual assistant that actually, if you've got a good number of Q&As and you add a couple of use cases, this could very quickly become a very useful bot for the employees of Tailwind Traders, or indeed if you were building something out for your customers, either externally or internally. A couple of things to call out. In terms of the triggers that you're adding, I could have added an unknown intent trigger. So let's actually go ahead and do that. And what that means is, if I ask a question and it doesn't recognize, it's not one of the things that can answer from Q&A, and it's not my book vacation trigger, then I can actually add a fallback message in here if I want to. I can say something like, sorry, I didn't understand that. Now, in the real world, you would want to do something like maybe hand off to a human, which we can do. We can transfer off to other systems. You can even transfer to staff members who are working in teams, and they can have a live agent conversation. There's lots of other triggers available to you if you actually start to sort of build out this capability. All right, so we've got a few minutes left. I guess one thing I haven't talked about yet is, when we started out with this greeting trigger, you may remember that originally there was a template referenced in here, and I said we'll come back to that later, but I replaced it with some inline text. Well, what you can actually do is you can create templates so that they can be reusable, and we create one for you in the EmptyBot welcome user, which says welcome to the EmptyBot sample. So I could have made the changes in here. That also allows me to potentially translate the bot and localize it, so I can actually have it available in multiple languages. What I have done though is I've created a confirmation card template, and here I'm using something called an adaptive card. And adaptive cards are a way of providing nice looking implementations and cards on multiple channels, like Teams in Outlook, for example. And there's an adaptive card designer, and you can see here that I've provided start date, end date, comments, and I've actually formatted them in a pretty nice way. Now that I've got this template, I can actually then reference that template. And I do want to make a couple of changes, because I think this is case sensitive. So I think that should work now. Start date, end date, type, and comments. So I've got my my JSON. So if I now go back into my designer, go to the create leave request dialog, scroll down to the confirmation message, which is here. So instead of trying to provide this all in sort of inline text, I can use what's something called an activity template, which is this. And the activity template is basically saying, I'm going to send this activity, which is an outgoing message. We have a full set of documentation for this, and we do have some investments planned to improve this and make this a bit more intuitive. I'm sending an activity. The activity has an attachment. The attachment is a card, and for the card, I want to use the confirmation card template that I have provided within my template files. Okay, so what that should do is provide me with a card when I'm confirming. So if I restart this bot. And then once we've done this, we're going to take a very quick look at publishing, show you how straightforward it is to actually provision and publish your bot into Azure. And then hopefully we'll have just enough time to show you how you can enable the bot working in something like Microsoft Teams. So we're going to wait for that bot to start. Adaptive cards is super cool, by the way. I would recommend that you check it out. It's definitely a way of you making your bot a bit more engaging. Adaptive cards have the ability to have buttons on them, and they are very commonly used in Teams bots, for example, where you might use adaptive cards for, you know, pop-up surveys, pop-up dialogues, forms, etc. So definitely worth something worth looking at. And as I say, we've got some significant investments coming over the next 3 to 6 months that will help you, if you are a less experienced bot builder, understand what all of that, you know, not necessarily need to know that syntax. Okay, so the bot started. Let's see if that adaptive card worked. And I may have made a mistake because I am rushing now because I want to get through stuff. But let's try this. So we're going to restart the conversation. I'm going to say I want to book some leave. I'll have it start tomorrow. Go till next Friday. We'll book some annual leave. And this time we'll actually start with our correct comment. We'll say long weekend. And there you go. Right. So instead of me getting inline text, I provided that card template, and it's automatically inserted those values because I've referenced them using that same dollar notation. And I get the same yes or no answers, and I could go ahead and answer that. And in the real world, you would then call out to maybe a HTTP request, maybe an Azure function, or maybe even add some custom actions in Visual Studio, like we talked about before, to engage with a third-party HR system. Cool. All right. So we've now got a pretty engaging bot. Handles leave requests, handles FAQs, handles the unknown intent. We've used adaptive cards to make it, you know, look and feel more engaging, and we've added interruptions. So we've done a lot in 45 minutes. So the next thing I can do is I can head over to publish. And in here, you can create a new publishing profile if you want to. And so here you can say, I want to select the publishing target, manage my profiles. And from here, you can then say, you can give your publishing profile a name, and you can choose web app functions. And we do have Power Virtual Agents, as I said before. If I choose web app and click next, it's actually then going to log me into Azure and say, okay, you want to create some new resources, pick your subscription. It's going to go and provision all of the resources for me, which will take a few minutes. But I have already done this with the previous bot, so I can show you what it looks like. Once you've created your publishing profile, if we jump back into publish, I can tick here and I can click publish selected bots. Takes a couple of minutes and it's published up to Azure. So let's go and look at what that looks like once I'm finished. Firstly, these are the resources that it's actually provisioned for me, right? Within Composer, I didn't have to visit the Azure portal until now. It's created a Cosmos DB account for state. I could have used blob storage if I wanted to. It's created Lewis and Q&A components for us within this particular environment, and it will automatically modify all of your bot settings as well. The most important thing, though, in here for you to understand is probably this one. So it's a bot channels registration resource. And this, I've pre-opened it here. And this effectively says, I am going to, the bot channels registration resource will register an app ID for you. It will point to your bot. So the web app that we actually provisioned, Composer's deployed our web app into the web app resource. And this is the endpoint that the bot will communicate on. Now, all this was configured for me, but it's very simple to set up if you're doing like an SDK bot yourself. Once we've configured where the bot is sitting, I can go to the channels page. And the channels page is really where the magic happens, because here I can say I'd like to enable web chat. And we have an open source embeddable web chat component where you can put it on your website in a few minutes. We can enable channels like Alexa. We could have a bot respond to the end of an Office 365 email address. We could have done speech. We could put the bot in Slack. But also you can see here that we've got Microsoft Teams. So I can click Microsoft Teams. I can say, yeah, Microsoft Teams commercial. I'm just going to hit save. There's plenty of instructions in here if you want to add it to, for example, like the Teams, like app catalog, for example. But I'm just going to click OK. And hopefully what we'll be able to show you is, now that's been done, if I go back to the channels page, I should be able to click on Microsoft Teams. And I should get a link. Okay, let's pull this in. So I've now got this link. It's linked me straight to my DDD demo 1 bot. And so I can now try something like, what does WOB mean? And what we should get back is an answer from our knowledge base. Okay, so I've previously deployed this bot just before this session, and it looks like I didn't tie up the FAQs, but you can see I did get my welcome message because I've joined the conversation, and I have configured the unknown intent. Let's try something else. Let's try book leave. Let's see if I configured the intent correctly. There we go. So I can say start tomorrow. And you can see here that very, very quickly I can get started with actually using my bot in Teams, and I could make that available. So I can test it right within the channel that my users will be in. All right, so that's the end of the demo. Let's just jump back and remind ourselves. As I said, we've created a pretty sophisticated bot. It's handling specific use cases using natural language to recognize the intent. We even extracted entities for our interruption and for editing the comment, where it would completely skip the prompt and simply update it for me. And we added FAQs so we can answer frequently asked questions. And the bot will orchestrate between those so that we can understand where it should route my message to. I then provisioned and published resources into Azure. Obviously, I've done that before, but it takes just a few minutes. And once you've done that within Azure, you can then go and configure your channels and immediately start testing. I've really just scratched the surface, but I'm hoping it gives you a really good idea of what's possible very, very quickly. If you'd like to get started and know more, we do have some MS Learn content around the Bot Framework SDK. That's over at aka.ms/AIML40. We also have a link there, Get Started with Composer, aka.ms/Try Composer. Please go and download it, give it a try. If you need anything, I'm always available. I love working with our customers. So please reach out to me on Twitter at Gary Pretty. Or my email address, gary.pretty@microsoft.com. Please drop me a message. Very keen to engage with all of our community, including brand new users. So I'd really encourage you to try that out. Quick call out before we do any Q&A, if there is any, please donate to the National Museum of Computing. A great cause, and I just want to say thank you as well to DDD and the whole community for sort of bringing this conference together. It's not always been an easy year for everybody, but it's been fantastic to talk. So let's just have a look and see if there's any questions. So we've got one question. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the chat and I can answer them now. If not, please reach out to me afterwards. So Andy says, have you got any experience with sending the unknown intent to Twilio agents? So I'm assuming here that you are talking about the Twilio channel that we offer within Azure Bot Service, so that you can use a Twilio for SMS, or there's an adapter, which is a way of you actually connecting your bot directly to Twilio. I think I've done this before, whereby you're effectively adding an unknown intent, as we saw just now in the demo, to your bot, so that it will handle when it doesn't recognize any of the other intents that we've set up, or Q&As. So I'm not sure. It looks like you're potentially having an issue with the unknown intent in Twilio. I'd encourage you just to reach out to me on my email address, because there's no reason that doesn't work as far as I'm aware. So please reach out to Gary@Microsoft.com, or reach out. I'd be happy to. I don't think think there's any other questions at the moment, so I think we are just about done.
Well, thank you very much for that, Gary. That's been an excellent presentation. So,
Great, glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everyone else has too. Yeah, you don't get a round of applause, unfortunately, so I could give you a little bit of clapping, but that's about as good as we can get. So, yeah, well, thank you all for coming, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. So, right, cheers.
Thanks, everyone.